In the distant mists of time, when empires were fragile and the fate of millions could turn on the stubborn resolve of a single man, China was a land of rival kings, cunning ministers, and farmers who sometimes rose to shake the foundations of dynasties. To step back into that ancient world is to witness not merely the building of walls or the teachings of philosophers, but the raw struggle of survival, vengeance, power, and rebellion. And within that vast canvas, there are stories that echo louder than stone and steel, stories less known to the Western imagination, yet vital to the pulse of Chinese memory. Imagine, if you will, a captured king who swallows his humiliation each night and sharpens his will for 20 years until the day comes to destroy the very man who once enslaved him. Picture an emperor so desperate to control thought itself that he burns the wisdom of centuries and buries living scholars in the earth, fearing their words more than armies. And finally, see a poor farmer, condemned to death for tardiness, who refuses to accept his fate and declares that if death is certain, it may as well be chosen in rebellion. These are not legends for children, but harsh truths of history, born in fire and blood, remembered in proverbs, and shaping the destiny of a civilization. The first tale begins in the turbulent age known as the Spring and Autumn period, when the states of Wu and Yue were bitter rivals. The Yue king, Goujian, suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of the Wu king, Fuchai. Captured, humiliated, and forced into servitude, Goujian tasted the bitterest humiliation a monarch could endure. Yet he endured, and more than that, he planned. Each night in his humble quarters, he would lie not on soft bedding but on coarse firewood, a constant reminder of the pain of defeat. He hung a container of gall bladder above his bed and would lick its bitterness each morning, vowing never to forget the taste of shame. The proverb born from his practice, Wa Xian Chong Dan, sleeping on firewood and tasting gall, still speaks of the iron discipline required for long-delayed revenge. To his enemies he seemed subdued, a broken man playing the role of servant. But in truth he was waiting, preparing, teaching his people patience. Years passed. Wu grew arrogant and complacent, its king blind to the steel hardening in the heart of Yue. When Goujian at last judged the time ripe, he struck with ruthless efficiency. The armies of Yue marched forth, disciplined, hardened, and fueled by the memory of humiliation. Wu collapsed beneath their assault, and the once mighty Fuchai, who had thought his rival destroyed, found himself undone by the patience of a man who never forgot. Goujian's story endures not only as a lesson in revenge but also as a meditation on resilience, a reminder that even in apparent defeat, the seed of victory can lie hidden, waiting for the right season to grow. Yet while one man's patience remade kingdoms, another man's fear reshaped the entire culture of China. The Qin dynasty rose in the 3rd century BCE, unifying the warring states under the iron rule of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor. His ambition was vast, to control not only lands and armies but also the minds of his subjects. Convinced that disunity of thought threatened his fragile empire, he resolved to extinguish all competing philosophies. In one of history's most chilling acts of intellectual repression, he ordered the burning of books that did not serve practical purposes. Texts of medicine, agriculture, and divination were spared, but the great works of philosophy, history, and poetry were consigned to flames. The knowledge of centuries, the insights of countless sages, went up in smoke, their ashes scattered in the wind. But burning books was not enough. The emperor feared that scholars, especially those who followed the teachings of Confucius, might use their words to undermine his authority. Thus began the infamous burning of books and burying of scholars. Hundreds of learned men were rounded up, accused of sowing dissent, and executed in gruesome fashion, some reportedly buried alive. The earth itself became their tomb, a silent witness to the terror of a ruler who sought to erase thought itself. While Western accounts often marvel at the emperor's monuments, the Great Wall, the terracotta army, the vast palaces, this darker chapter shaped the Chinese intellectual landscape. The memory of smothered voices lingered long after the dynasty itself collapsed, serving as both warning and inspiration. Fear of unrestrained power and reverence for the endurance of ideas became woven into the cultural fabric. Even in silence, The scholars spoke across generations, reminding posterity that thought cannot be buried forever. And as dynasties rose and fell, the people themselves were never entirely voiceless. Their voices erupted most fiercely in the year 209 BCE, when two humble men, Chen Sheng and Wu Guang, found themselves trapped by fate. They were ordinary peasants conscripted for military service, but floods delayed their journey to the muster point. The law of the Qin was merciless. Failure to arrive on time carried the penalty of death. Facing inevitable execution, Chen Sheng posed a question that would ignite history. If we are to die, why not die in rebellion? In those simple words lay the spark of revolution. Gathering their fellow conscripts, the two declared open defiance against the Qin dynasty. Chen Sheng proclaimed himself king, the first peasant in Chinese history to take such a bold step. His followers, bound not by noble birth but by shared desperation, swelled into an army. Villages opened their gates, peasants rallied, and for a brief, heady moment it seemed the farmers of the land might topple an empire. Though Chen Sheng's rebellion ultimately failed, crushed by the might of Qin, its significance was immense. It marked the beginning of a pattern that would echo through the centuries. The masses, when pushed too far, could rise against even the most formidable rulers. The dynasty itself, shaken by constant uprisings, collapsed within years, paving the way for the Han Dynasty and a new chapter of Chinese history. Taken together, these three stories reveal not the grandeur of monuments but the deeper truths of human will. In Goujian, we see the unbreakable patience of a man who could wait 2 decades to avenge a single humiliation. In Qin Shi Huang, we see the paranoia of absolute power, a ruler who tried to silence thought itself and in so doing ensured that his legacy would always be shadowed by fear. In Chen Sheng, we see the defiance of the lowly, the spark of rebellion born not of strategy but of desperation, a spark that could topple dynasties. They are different in setting and character, yet united by a common thread, the resilience of human determination, whether in the form of patience, repression, or revolt. And beyond the borders of China, they remind us of something universal. Vengeance delayed, fear of free thought, rebellion against injustice. These are not merely Chinese experiences but human ones. Yet the particular forms they took in ancient China gave rise to proverbs, warnings, and traditions that shaped a civilization for millennia. Goujian's firewood and gall remain a metaphor for perseverance. Qin Shi Huang's book Burning endures as a cautionary tale about censorship. Chen Sheng's cry before his doomed uprising continues to echo in the memory of popular resistance. To read these stories is to peel back the veil of time and glimpse a society where kings could become servants, emperors could fear the words of scholars, and peasants could dare to challenge the throne. The China of antiquity was not only jade palaces and painted scrolls, but also fields soaked in sweat and blood, voices raised in defiance, and rulers haunted by their own choices. These tales, less familiar to the Western world, carry lessons as relevant now as they were 2,000 years ago. The patient can triumph over the arrogant. Power that silences thought builds its own downfall. And even the most ordinary among us, when cornered by injustice, may find the courage to rise. The echoes of those lessons still resound in the corridors of history, whispering that the past is never truly gone, only waiting to be heard again.